What kind of fun travel? Just like touring or hiking or?
Well, we do a lot of hiking and traveling, but mostly, most recently, we.
All right.
No? Peru?
All right, first of all,
Yes, of course.
I want to thank you, not just for showing up tonight. What I want to thank you and honor you for is the fact, is why you're here. The fact that you are here indicates, I'm making assumptions, but I think I can probably fairly say the reason you're here is because you're a person who cares about the boys in your community. I do this because I get a lot out of it for myself. I feel like I'm giving back to the community, but the reason I do it is because there is a boy crisis going on. There's an entire book about it. Richard Reeves, a guy from the Brookings Institute, wrote a book, Boys and Men, and did these little 20-year studies and things like that about what's going on with boys and how and why they're so far behind and why they're failing in so many categories compared to women. I've been involved with this for about 10 years myself, working with boys and men in the in-school groups. So getting a chance to see the growth and the expansion and the evolution that these boys go through is what really I feel is just really part of my mission. I think now more than ever, because of just the message that's going on out there about what it means to be a successful man is diluted, and so boys are trying to have to choose their own path. So for you to show up here because you care about boys and their success is, I just want to honor you for that. And for you to give up an evening to learn a few skills and things to be comfortable in watching and helping some boys become better persons and eventually good men. I just want to honor you for that. That just, that works. So thank you for being here. What we're going to do tonight, there's like 3 or 4 sections to this. Main part of it is, I think all of you at one point or another met Tom. And if Tom sent you an email with a link to some videos, I'll guess that probably only a third of you actually went through them. But if you did, that's great. And if you didn't, it doesn't matter because we're going to give you just a quick review. So the things that Tom sent out, the videos, what we're covering, it was the Facilitation 101. The other one was emotional intelligence. That's like the underlying theme of what we really do is emotional intelligence. And the other was compassionate communication. So those 3 videos are sort of the foundational things. But there are also some logistical things that I'm including in this presentation. And the other reason I wanted to get this group together is because you guys are all focused on North County. Tom, how many mentors do we have all around San Diego?
Right now, we're floating at around 120 mentors in San Diego County.
How many do you think are active, though?
Active? I'd say about a third of them are active in schools.
Okay. So that's the whole county. Now, this group, for the most part, is fairly new. Most of the how many guys have sat in a boys' circle for any period of time? Okay. How many guys have? This is like kind of a new thing to be in school. You're still pretty green, pretty new. Okay, great. So in particular, for North County, yeah, get that. I wanted to do a little update on where North County is, because that's the focus for this group. There are really 5 kinds of schools 5 kinds of venues where we engage with the boys. The high schools, right now we're like Ivy High School, We're about to start at Carlsbad High School, probably within the next 2 weeks.
Also RBB.
Rancho Buena Vista, yeah, thank you. Rancho Buena Vista High School was actually the first high school I worked with. And then middle schools, we've got Roosevelt Middle School, Sullivan Middle School. So there's that class. And the reason okay, I'll finish the sentence here. Then we've got the open community, which is for boys where we're not in the school. And they get referred to us by a mom or a neighbor or something like that. And they just come to the open community group. That happens every 2 weeks in Encinitas. Then we have the NCRC JDI program. That's the National Conflict Resolution Center and the Juvenile Diversion Initiative in conjunction with the DA's office. These are kids, boys, that had done something, they got in trouble, and they were offered to either spend time in juvenile hall or sit in a boys and men meeting for 6 to 12 weeks. And so they kind of rotate, they come in and out. And they don't know each other.
Okay.
And that changes the whole dynamic of, it's a different dynamic than, working with some of the other locations. But the other one are continuation schools. So Ivy High School is a continuation school that we work with. We've got 2 groups up there with about 45 kids between the 2 groups. And they have to put in community service hours to be part of that. So the reason I point this out is that if we talk later, if you want to get involved in a group, then we can talk about which one fits well for you, because I'll be honest with you, when I started with high school boys, and that had its challenges, and I kind of got cut my teeth on high school guys, and then I finally got the courage to go to middle schools, and that takes a lot of courage. And we'll talk about those nuances.
The vast majority of the groups that we're going to be in are middle school groups. So I'd say out of the almost 40 groups that we're in, I think about 30 of them are going to be middle schools.
Why do you think that is in terms of the schools inviting us?
I mean, we can talk later about the reason for that. I think that most of it has to do with the fact that that's where their most formative years are. So when we're looking at the changes in their lives, we're looking at, they go from elementary school to middle school, and all of a sudden grades matter, all of a sudden they get chores, all of a sudden puberty happens, and then they get a lot of responsibilities, and if they don't have any guidance, then that can spiral out of control pretty quick. By the time they get to high school, they've already gone through so many challenges that a lot of the boys that we encounter are coming from the JDI program or the continuation schools. So we're not in a lot of high schools. The boys that are in the high schools that we usually service, they in the public high schools, those boys have had at least some kind of guidance, and if not, then it's a different environment that we're catering to.
Yeah. Usually the first experimentations with drugs and alcohol happens around 11, 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Joe and Craig, their first intention was to get into the 200 middle schools all around San Diego County and try to get to them early. So that's still part of the dream, and we're working on that. But anyway, just to let you know, there are nuances with each age group and each of the environments, and we can talk offline about specifically what that is and what fits for you. But again, everything here these are all schools that are from 56 up. So right now, we're in the Carlsbad School. We have an agreement with the Carlsbad School District, Oceanside, Vista, Fallbrook, Bonzel. We're getting one with Poway that's going right now. San Dieguito, we have an agreement with, but we're mired in political crap. We have a new superintendent who loves the program, wants us in 3 schools, and then all the politics and everything internally there, and that's typical for that school district. So to be able to, all of our dreams here, the Boys and Men's do, be able to positively affect as many boys as we can in our community. And so the only way we can do that is to get just an army of guys like you with the passion and the intention, and with maybe some basic skills, so you can feel comfortable in each of those environments, because they do vary. Okay? So, when we start a brand new group in a brand new school, on the very first meeting, boys don't know why they're there. And so they come in, they sit down, and they're looking at us, and we're looking at them, and there's a big question: why are we here? Well, we want to ask them, why do you think you're here? And more than anything else, we have to contextualize and explain to them as much as we can up front in order to achieve our basic objective, and that is to create a safe environment. If we can create a safe environment for them, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, then they're going to take the mask off, because every kid in there is wearing a mask. If you've ever done a camp weekend, then you know that's part of the theme of the whole weekend are the masks we wear. And the work that we do on the weekend at the camp is what's really behind that mask. And more than anything, how can we make it safe? How can we create a safe enough environment where you can take the mask off and get a deeper look at yourself and find out if there's a behavior that's sabotaging you, if anxieties, go through the whole list of mental issues. If we can make it safe enough for them to be able to dive into and find out what's really the root cause. In the question of we don't ask what's wrong with you. It's part of the book title. The question isn't what's wrong with you. The question is what happened to you, and what meaning did you give that thing. Part of the reason why I even do this work is because for 20 years I've been sitting in men's circles like this, and Dennis sits there, with me in our MKP group. I don't know how many Mankind Project guys. Anybody? Okay, great. Anyway, those are Mankind Project, and there's many others that are all personal development for men. And in those situations, what I've found is men struggling with their current lives usually lies with a root cause back in the trauma or an effect or a belief system or something from way back when they were younger. Yeah. And so that's a lot of the work that we do in our men's group, is finding that root cause, take a look at that, reframe it, so for a man currently can settle with that, with himself, because now he's reframed it, he has a better understanding of himself, and he's not dragging around his resentments, regrets, and everybody that he's hated his whole life that's now keeping him from being happy and fulfilled.
Yeah, a lot of the reason that we're doing this is to learn how to create that safety, and in order to do that, we have to look at what it is that we're going through, and remember that these boys are going through that thing right now. So they're challenged with a lot of these things, and the last thing we want to do is to come in like everybody else. They have people telling them what to do all the time. They have people trying to change their lives. They're trying to coach them or teach them something. And the last thing we want to do is show up like that, because we're going to just be like them, and they don't want to listen to those people to begin with. The reason that they're even in the program is because they're challenged by this system. And so if we show up like them, they're going to treat us like them, and we're no longer safe.
So this is everything that we do in our communication, in the languaging that we use, in a lot of it, everything always comes back to that point of safety, because a lot of us who have sat in circles, we've seen that point where somebody said something shaming, blaming, guilting to a boy, and all of a sudden, you just see him just go cold. And now he's just telling us whatever we want to hear. And we're not being, they're accustomed to that. They've been telling adults their whole life what they want to hear, just so they can be safe and not yelled at or something like that. So this is really the foundation of what we do. But in order to do that, we have to contextualize everything for them. We have to tell them who we are. We have to tell them our story. This is the part of mentoring that involves the courage to tell our own story, which means it leaves you kind of vulnerable. But what they're looking for an adult who is willing to be genuine, authentic, and not bullshit them. If we can accomplish that, then and we create that safety, then, like one of the mentors told me, those kids sit there and they go, you know, we're always telling them what we think, right? I don't care what you think. This is what they're saying to adults. I don't care what you think until I think you care about me. Back to creating safety. So in our presentation initially to the boys, we will explain everything to them so they understand why you're here. So we tell them who we are, Voice of Manor History, ourselves, why we do this. I'll tell them most of us are just men in the community who care about you and want to see you get something that we didn't get until later in life. Now we get into why were you picked? There's only 20, there's limited space, there's only 20 boys that get to be at most in every circle. So why did you get picked? And I've asked this question to the boys, and the guy goes, because we're the troublemakers. And, you know, and they're right. Most of the time, their behavior looks like they're troublemakers.
They also don't recognize that they have a particular set of skills that sets them apart from their classmates. And they're looking at it as troublemaking skills. But what it is it's leadership skills that just haven't been directed.
When we get a chance here, we'll touch on a little bit about ADHD boys.
Sometimes they do get, though, when you say it in passing, they really do get that somebody did care about them enough to want them to be there. They actually hear that.
And that we want to say that to them. We want, and you're right, if they'll sometimes know who the person is that referred them, and that sense of somebody cares about me can do a lot for their personal self-esteem and everything else. And the last part of it is, we tell them, you're not required to be here. Come to 2 or 3 meetings, and then decide if you still want to be part of this. Because we really don't want a boy in a circle doing work if he's not ready to do the work. And there are some boys who just aren't ready to go deeper into their own self-examination than, too superficial. There's stuff down there in the cellar they may not even be aware of and are not ready to touch. So, we're not there to rip wounds off, rip band-aids off of wounds and things like that. But we are there to give them an opportunity to find out that whatever they're going through, they're not alone.
Yeah, Kelly, just, when you made the comment about when you said to the kid or the boy, why are you here? And the kid will say, I'm a troublemaker. And I've had an experience like that where I go, well, you know what? I was a troublemaker too. And that's the way to connect. And I just wanted to share that, because that was kind of what I was.
And thank you for saying that, because that's exactly what we do.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is part of who we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So, the non-required to be there part, that is different in the JDI program. Those boys are required to be there, but in the vast majority of cases, they aren't required to be in those spaces with us. if they choose not to be.
And before we gloss over that comment, because I've been doing this for 7 years now, or 6, I guess. There are times when the boys, when they really trust your story, not the details, but the story, the feeling that you've shared with them, they will invite you to parent in a loving suggestion that they don't hear as a condemnation. They will actually invite it. It's amazing. And then, and the hard part for me is then you start to go there, and many times you have to let go because 2 or 3 other kids will start doing just that for each other. It's very contagious.
We'll talk about it separately, the difference between parenting and mentoring. But Tom and I were talking about this today too. There's a gap. Here's, hang on a second, I got a slide I want to show you. This one. This was my experience of adults. Crap. Adults, anybody that was older than, I don't know, maybe 10 years older than me, they were full of crap because all I would get from them was criticism, ridicule, admonishment, and punishment. That's what my parents did. That's what my teachers did. That's what the police officers did. You know, so this is my perception, and I own this one. I made this up. Okay, so this may not be true for you, but this was my view of adults when I was growing up. All adults were full of crap. And go ahead.
I can hear you right there, and I feel that's certainly me.
Yeah.
As well.
And subsequently, my survival kit was then to just be cold and caring, shut down. And I knew I needed to do this work when I had emotionally shut myself down to the point where even when my mother died and I stepped into her room and I see her dead body on the table, I didn't feel anything. I didn't express any emotions, I didn't cry, I was just looking at myself going, wow, what the have I done to myself? So we're trying to
Not be that.
yes, this is what we don't.
It's hard.
Yeah.
We're trying to close the gap between that, with the separation that boys have in their relationship with adults. Okay, we're trying to come in as mentors. No, we're on your side. We're trying to come in as peers to lift them up, not a hey look, here's 5. You know, if you just did this, and this, you know, then you know you'd be a success. And even now, when I ask the boys, you know, how do you define success? I swear half of them go, I just want to be happy. I get that. You know, why? What's going on at home? It's not a happy place. I don't want to be there. Okay. Who else is not happy being at home? The hands go up. Oh, okay, so you're not alone. Oh, okay, good. How do you handle it? How do you handle it? When we get the boys advising each other, that's okay. And that's when it gets pretty fun. When Michael and I are at Rancho Buena Vista High School, and we've got several boys in there who've been with us for several years now, and they'll take the new guys and they'll go, well, yeah, well, so how come on a scale of 1 to 10, school's only a 2? You know, why are you failing those classes? Well, you know, you're not turning. They're doing it. We're not telling them. If I tell them, then I'm put in the same category with the teachers, parents, and counselors, and I don't want to be in that category. I want to be. We have one thing in common: we're men, and we all have wounds, and we're all trying to heal, and we're all trying to get successful and, you know, live a happy, healthy life.
We'll cover that in Frapping Land, but the advice thing, whether it comes from us or from them, it's always important to make sure that they're getting consent, right? So if I really feel the need to give them advice, that's about me. All of a sudden it's coming from a place of judgment. But if they're asking me for advice, then they're seeking this kind of attention where they think that I have an answer for something.
Mhm.
And so now it's not about me, it's about them. And so it's important to have that consent from them, that they want this.
And in your circles, I mean, we have, REV's kind of there's something chemical in the air, but we have 3 seniors, 3, in a group of 12, 14 kids, that literally do exactly what they will avoid parenting in their own questions and advice. They don't give the advice. They'll say, oh, well, this is what happened. I was getting D's, and now and all 3 of these kids are the first generation in their families that are going to college, have a career path lined up, and they're all 17 years old. It's amazing. And they literally tell their story. They don't do their own, even in their own actions, they don't parent. They can run the group.
They could run the group themselves.
And it's also important to recognize that them going on to be successful in life is not the metric for success, right? The point is for them to find themselves and to really discover who they are. And from that, they get to navigate their life in a more clear way because they understand themselves better.
Perfect. So, I want to do a quick review of the basics that Tom had in the videos that he put up there. We have an acronym for the 4 things we don't do and the 4 things we do. And it's a simple acronym, and if you don't remember anything else as a mentor, but just follow these, then you can't help but be successful. I always kind of tease the newer guys to say, mentoring is actually pretty easy because 80% of it is just showing up. Because for a lot of these boys, when you ask them, who was the last man who said he was proud of you? And now, most of them deal with just dads or men who just haven't shown up. My dad was like that. He was just too busy. He showed up once to one of my track meets, and that was it. So here are the 4 things that we do not do. Number 1, we don't fix. We're not there to fix them. They're not going to listen to you anyway, because every adult around them is already trying to fix them. Well, if you just, that's somebody else's job. Our job is to work on their emotional health and emotional intelligence. We're not there to rescue. My son taught me that one. He taught me that he can only learn by crash and burn. So I named him the Phoenix. He would literally crash his car, total it, and he'd come out of the ashes and he'd get a new car and fucking get it out.
Yeah, so the rescue thing is both from their circumstances and from their emotions. So they will come in sad or angry or ashamed, and our job isn't there to change the way that they feel. They're sad for a reason, so they're allowed to be sad. They're angry for a reason, so they're allowed to be angry. So we're not there to rescue them from those circumstances.
Yeah. We don't want to invalidate their emotions. We want them to recognize them and get to the root cause of it, and then let them deal with it. So here it is. Back to advise. But to Tom's point, we'll give it. It's unsolicited advice. Sometimes we'll say, can I offer you something? And he'll say yes or no. And then you can say, this was my experience. That's one of the foundational things as a mentor. I can speak from my experience, but I sure as hell can't sit there and go, this is what you ought to be doing, because if I'm telling you what you should be doing, I'm coming from my belief system, my values, my wounds, all my experiences that were probably tainted with my background.
If you're a new mentor, it's funny. No matter how big your success story is, they love to hear the first decision how you fucked up. Because on some level, they don't believe that you could actually do that. I've actually had kids come up to me after a circle and say, did you make it, was that like for effect? I said, no, I had a 1.9 grade average in high school, and I have 2 degrees from Berkeley, and they don't, because they don't believe it. So they really love that you're flawed.
One of our early on mentors was famous for an opening line in the first circle I ever sat with him. This is a guy who spent 15 years in federal prison, being one of the top meth cookers in California. And he would tell his story.
Oh, okay.
And he would always say the line, I'm not in here to impress you with my accomplishments. I'm here to tell you the 50 ways I fucked things up and still got going. All right.
The advice thing is really important. I know for me, that's the quickest way to get me to not do something. And if I feel that way, then chances are likely somebody else feels that way too. And so whenever somebody asks me for advice, I don't give them advice, even if they're asking me for advice. I turn it around on them and ask them, well, what would you do if I was in that situation? Let's say your best friend is in the situation that you're in, or maybe I'll give them a situation that's parallel to that, and give them an opportunity to think through it, because now they are developing the tools to navigate their own life in reframing it.
The last one is project. We don't project, our own wants, our own feelings, our own desires, our own thoughts. Projecting on them is making assumptions that they're, making assumptions about them. And so just projecting our own crap or our own belief system just never works. So if that's the 4 things not to do, then here are the 4 things that we do. Number 1, we listen. How many guys here enjoy it when their wife or girlfriend or significant other says, tell me more about that, honey?
Does that happen in marriage?
It used to. It does in the early stages. The point is that I don't know a man that doesn't like to be heard. I don't know a human being who doesn't enjoy being heard and understood. So, if you're spending 80% of your time listening and only 10% talking, perfect. We really want to drive it out to them talking. And like at RBV, when we got the boys asking them questions of each other, and we're just sitting back going, all right, it's your meeting. That's exactly the environment that we want to set up.
Listening is not just hearing what they're saying. It's listening for what's behind what they're saying. They're going to say a lot of things, and that's going to tell you a little bit about the story of who they are behind what they're saying. So, somebody may show up and say very little, because it may not be safe for them to say things at home. Or somebody may show up and be very disruptive and say a lot in the middle of other people saying things. And that's a young man that isn't being heard somewhere else. So there's more to their story than just what they're saying. And the opportunity for us is to really hear where they're coming from, what they're trying to show us. And they're going to show up as themselves, whoever they are. And the opportunity is to just really take that in and not judge that.
Yeah. The real work as a mentor is being fully present, not distracted yourself. And when a kid is just telling you a story and going on, that you're listening to them, maybe trying to guide him back to, ask him a couple questions to get to the root cause. But that's probably the biggest work, is just being fully present with the boy that's talking. Accepting is the other one. Just letting them feel that we're accepting who they are and how they show up, regardless of whatever their heritage or culture, whatever. Same thing at RBV. We had boys that were showing up stoned, and they would get stoned before they would get stoned before they go to school, and they show up in our group. And the policy in the school is, if a kid shows up stone and the teacher recognizes that, they're gonna send him home. I actually had to sit with the counselors to have this discussion and say, I'm not gonna kick out any boy who comes in stoned. I want him to be in there, because if he's stoned, then, because everybody can tell, I'm gonna zero right in on him going, so you stoned today? Okay, so, so what made you want to come to school stoned? Have you ever done that before? Were there any consequences? Anybody here, in the room here, anybody, get caught being stoned in school? What was the consequence? And what was the
you
risk?
get out of getting stoned? You know?
And not that it's 100% successful, but we have one young man whose cousin was in our program, who came every day as a freshman. Every day. How unbelievable is that?
Mhm.
And now that here's a kid that's a star on the baseball team, he's a leader, he's working, he's got all this good stuff going on.
I also don't let him get away with just showing up stoned and hiding in the corner. I'll pick him out and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so let's, talk to me.
They also want to be seen in
They
the
do.
gap.
Yeah.
And also, another important aspect of that is that because we're not there to get them in trouble, they feel safer to be with us in any condition. So when we know that they're toast, and nothing happens to them, they feel safe to come back and at least share some more about who they are.
Yeah. Trying to remember which circle, who it was, one of the boys, it was in our last open community. Remember the kid was saying, that what he's working on for himself is he wants to cut back on smoking. Now his parents are freaking out when they're talking to me about it.
So the card.
Yeah, and how old was he? Only in 10th grade. And he's already talking about, no, I want to kind of cut back. And so one of the other kids was advising, well, and here, this was great advice from this other kid. He says, so when you smoke, how often do you smoke by yourself or with a group in a party? He goes, do you smoke a lot by yourself? He goes, yeah. He goes, then you got a problem.
Sandy was talking to me.
Sammy was saying that. He says, I used to do that, and that was when I was having to smoke just to calm myself down when I'm by myself was an indication there's other stuff going on. He goes, now if I'm out, partying or something and somebody lights up, I'll light up. But the issue was, are you controlling it or is it controlling you? And at least they had that conversation amongst themselves. But because I'll guarantee you, hey, we're in California, right? Every one of these kids they haven't already smoked dope, their friends do or something like that. So we definitely have to deal with it. Okay, so the last two then, modeling. We're modeling healthy, I don't know what's the right way to put it, stay politically correct. Healthy masculinity.
We're showing up as ourselves, really, when it comes down to it. You're going to show up as who you are. And these boys are going to see you for who you are. They're going to see you in your flaws, they're going to see you in your triumphs, and they're going to see you in your tragedies.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can see that you are like them, or they're like you, that gives them hope. Right? It gives them somebody to look up to and say, hey, you know what, you screwed up, I'm screwing up, look how successful I think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe I can do that too. And so the modeling is just about just showing up as you, because they get to see a person that is there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important.
Yeah, we want to speak to our fuck-ups and modeling how we got through it. Or even if we've got some current thing going on. Yeah, I've got some current thing and I'm working on it. But we're modeling, not avoiding and addressing our own personal issues, how we did it. The last part of it is just praising them. When a kid comes back and goes, yeah, I'm failing 5 classes. And well, where do you want to be? Yeah, I'd like to be passing. Okay. What does it take to do that? Well, I got to turn in this. Okay. Well, what if you turn that in next week? Kid comes back next week and he turns it in. Oh, man, proud of you. Proud of you. Good job.
Praise is is really powerful, because, I mean, like, how many of you ever heard, attention-seeking behavior, like that phrase, right? Everybody's looking for attention, right? Everybody's looking for attention. There's no such thing as attention-seeking behavior. All of it is for attention. If I'm talking to you, I'm looking for attention. If you're talking to me, you're looking for attention. So if we frame it as attention-seeking behavior, we're putting a negative spin on this thing that everybody does. So why would we condemn somebody that is looking for attention? So praise gives us the opportunity to give them the attention that they want. Whether it be, you can read the boys that you're with. If they want attention privately, you can just pull them aside after group and say, hey, I really appreciate how you showed up today. I really appreciate your questions today. You know what, you gave really great advice. And then there are boys that are looking for public attention. You can just point them out right there, hey, that was a really great question. You know? And so this gives us an opportunity to give them the attention that we've all been seeking all our lives, right? And so we get to flip that script and not look at it as seeking behavior. Everybody is wanting it, right? I mean, we all want it still.
Okay, so that's the 4 things that we do. Now, one of Tom's favorites is this acronym. And go ahead, Tom.
Why am I talking? Yeah, sometimes it's better to just listen and just wait. I can't tell you how many times I watch a boy start to get into his emotions or go silent for just a moment, and somebody inevitably just jumps in and says anything. They just say something, and now you rob that boy of the opportunity to feel his feelings. We want him there. We want him to feel the feelings. And so just wait. He'll give you a signal. He'll give you a signal. You'll know when you see it, when he wants to be re-engaged. But if you see that opportunity for a young man to just really be reflective, just wait.
Okay. Okay. So one of the first things that we do in the very first meeting, in order to create safety for the boys, once we've explained to them who we are, what we are, all that, they've got the contextualized everything for them. Then the next question is, what do we need to do to feel safe in this circle? This is a talking circle, by the way, guys. You all got to participate. Remember, we're all going to talk. What do you need? What needs to be in place for this to be safe? Now, we don't put these up. We don't put these up for the boys. We leave it blank, and we ask them, okay, so what do you need to make for this to be safe? And inevitably, they pick all these same things. You got to respect, who's talking. You got to listen. We always kind of throw in, you got to participate. You can't come in here and hide out. We're not here to judge each other. Confidentiality. And we tell them whatever gets said in this room stays in this room. That's a foundation of what differentiates us from the teachers, the staff, the school psychologists, and everything else. Even their therapist, they'll say, they don't always get the straight scoop. But for us, in order to make it safe for them, we have to tell them it's going to be confidential, whatever gets out of here. No parent, teacher, nobody outside of this room hears what gets said here. Okay? You can tell, if somebody asks you, you want to tell them what you shared in the group, you're free to do that, but you can't talk about anything that anybody else said. And we're committed to not talking to any administrators about what was said. With the exception of we're mandated reporters. So as a mandated reporter, that means the state requires us that if they're going to harm themselves, being harmed, harming somebody else, you know, suicide ideation, then we have to say something legal. But we also tell them, if any of that comes up, you're not going anywhere alone. We're going to strategize on what's in your best interest.
Tom, did you, that handwriting there, is that Tom or you?
No, that's just
It's font.
'Cause I don't know if it's my astigmatism or just you, but that 3 strikes rule looks like 5.
Oh, yeah, that's what you,
I just thought maybe you wrote it.
And so the last two is we always tell our boys, we always come up with this one, no cell phones. And then we got a 3 strikes rule. And so we ask the boys, so we put in the context of, okay, so if anybody violates any of these, then what are the consequences? They go, well, you know, we should give them 3 tries. Okay, so we got a 3 strike rule. Okay, and what's the consequence? Kick them out. They always say that. And we go, no, here's what we'll do. What that means is, you're not ready to do work today, and that's okay. Go back to class, and we'll see you next week. We love you anyway. There's only been maybe 2 instances where I actually had to pull a boy completely out of the group, but even in that case, I told him, you're invited to be back in the group, but you've got to commit to and let us know that when you show up there, you're going to show up there to support your brothers in the group. You know, because I'll tell them, if there's some guy in the corner here talking about his dog just died or something, a family member was shot, and you're giggling in the other corner, you know, that's disrespect or anything else. And you know, obviously what's going to happen, this kid's just going to shut down. I have boys who wouldn't come back in the circle because of one particular guy when this kid was talking about his mom died 2 years ago. So I had plucked this kid out of the group and say, you're welcome to come back, but you have to commit that you're going to show up for your brothers. So these are not rules, these are agreements that we get their buy-in to. And at every meeting, I usually put this up, and I'll, at the beginning of the meeting, ask the boys, okay, now, what do we all agree on? You know, and have one of the boys go through and read it.
I'm gonna get a little water.
Yeah, I agree. So, can you bring me some more? Over there? Can you, just go to the corner?
So you want me to do every?
Yes.
They're all right-handed.
That's the left-handed one? I always tell the boys in the beginning, you come to school because you're working on your IQ. In this circle, we're working on your EQ. We're talking about emotional intelligence. And we kind of get into the talks about it. There's a lot of books on emotional intelligence. Because I come from a corporate background, I love to talk about how much that's used in the corporate world now, how, you know, the emotional intelligence and measurements of that is used, you know, in hiring processes and things like that, and the importance of that.
They call it soft skills now.
Yeah. But because we're talking about emotional intelligence, and sometimes we'll ask, and we'll write it up on the board, what do you think this means? You know, we'll have that discussion. But I like to, in my groups, I like to always put this up on the board. And I stole that from David Hawkins, from his book, Power versus Force. He's an MD and a PhD and had the biggest psych clinic in New York. And he came up with a more extended scale of emotions, but I like to use this because from one week to the next, we'll have the boys check in, okay? That's the foundation of what we do in the circles. Each boy checks in. So the check-in, we can vary, we can talk about that, but there's different ways you can do the check-in. But I always ask them on, this is the way I'll do it. I'll tell them, okay, give me your name, grade, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel overall?
Home school.
And then at home, on a scale of 1 to 10, and at school, 1 to 10. Now, I put a word to it because I actually wanted to put a little word to it, so it's not just this, with this number. And oftentimes we've talked about this whole scale. And David Hawkins will tell you from an energetic perspective, the most debilitating emotion is shame. Shame, like, wow, you really fucked up. Yeah.
Shame is more of I am fucked up. Guilt is more of the I am fucked up. And so those are two different pieces that are very similar, but the context is one is on personal, the view of who they are, and the other one is the view on behavior. So they're two separate things.
But the point of putting this up there is to get them connected with and speaking to what are the predominant emotions that are going on with them. And when they put a number to it, a lot of times they'll just, 7. You're into acceptance. Okay, so what's going on that you're having to accept at home or at school, personally, So this really lays the foundation for the questions that we can present to them. Again, just try to be as deep as we can. Anything else I want to say about that? Okay? The last part of this is stealing from Tom's video. Empathetic communication. Probably back into the listening piece of it, these are all the elements of the most important part of what we do. If 80% of success is showing up, the 20% is how we show up. And if we're showing up with empathetic communication, wanting to understand what they're saying, allowing them to say it, validating their feelings, being supportive of whatever's going on for them, being compassionate, wanting to connect with them, allowing them to be valued and heard. If we're talking to them in this languaging or with this energy, then we can really do a lot of breakthroughs and really allow them to be more in touch with who they really are and show up in the best way. Okay, so that concludes this part of the presentation. Let's take a 5 or 10 minute break, and then we're going to go into a little experiential process right afterwards. So be back here at 7:10.